Simone, I think I just forwarded you something I wasn't supposed to. Pat's been reaching out to our accounts all week. And that email I sent you says she's taking the whole Halcyon book to Meridian Partners. My CFO already has a sit-down with her penciled in for Monday morning at 8. I was standing at my desk in my home office on Morrison Avenue in Charlotte when Terence Folau called me at 6:17 p.m. on a Friday in May. I am Simone Holloway. I am 47 years old. I have spent the last 8 years as a senior sales director at Halcyon Advisory Group, and I have built a client list that contained, as of the moment Terence's voice came through my phone, exactly 61 accounts. I did not sit down. My legs knew before my brain did that sitting would be the wrong move. I was already moving toward my desk, already reaching for the laptop, already opening my email with the other hand. Terence kept talking, something about his CFO, something about Patricia promising continuity, something about a Monday morning meeting, and I was already scrolling to find the forwarded message. There it was. The subject line read, "Exciting Next Chapter," and the body of the email was 61 names, formatted like a portfolio. Every single account I had touched in 8 years, with one-line descriptions underneath each one that were accurate in the way only someone sitting directly above my work could make them accurate. What was in the room with me was the mathematics of what I stood to lose. $147,200 a year, the base pay of $94,000, commission on 61 accounts. Every contract I had negotiated myself, every renewal I had shepherded through, every client who called me by my first name because I had earned the right to be called that. All of it was being represented in that email as the credential of someone else. Patricia Sorrento, my supervisor for 6 of my 8 years at Halcyon. The woman I'd watched present my pipeline numbers to the board 4 consecutive times under her own name. 4 times I had sat in the back of a conference room with a notebook and a coffee that went cold. And I had listened to her use words like my pipeline and my strategic relationships, while the senior partners nodded and took notes on what I had built, cell by cell, call by call, Saturday morning by Saturday morning. But the thing that made me stop moving, the thing that made this something other than a standard exit betrayal, was the timestamp at the bottom of Patricia's forwarded email to Terence. 11:47 p.m., Thursday, sent from her Halcyon corporate address on company hardware. 14 hours before she walked into our office Friday morning and handed in a resignation letter. Not an impulse. Not a last-minute grab on the way out the door. Not something she rationalized as belonging to her because she had supervised the work. This was planned, downloaded while she was still technically an employee subject to the data use and non-solicitation policy. Downloaded while she was drawing a salary. That timestamp was the detail that was going to matter to Renata Obi, my attorney, in about 45 minutes when I called her and did not spend any time on small talk. Terence was still talking, but something about loyalty, something about relationships, something about his CFO needing to understand the value proposition. I was hearing him the way you hear someone speaking through water, present, clear, but already distant because the real conversation was happening on a screen in my hands. I watched the list of accounts scroll by. Folau Steel Fabrication. Annual contract value, $2.3 million. The largest single account on the list. The one Patricia had called first, which meant she knew what she was doing, which meant this was not just a desperate grab. This was a calculated move to establish credibility. "Terence," I said, "thank you for sending that to me. I appreciate it." I did not tell him what I was going to do. I did not tell him that I could already feel the shape of the next 54 hours forming in my head like a structure I had been building in pieces for 8 years without quite knowing what the pieces were for. I did not tell him that I had known this moment was coming. I had known it the way you know something is wrong with your car before the check engine light comes on. I had felt it in the way Patricia sat in board meetings with my numbers projected on a screen behind her. I had felt it in the way she had dismissed my habit of emailing myself detailed call notes after every single client meeting. Subject line always the same. CN, client name, date. She had called it paranoid once, in front of the sales team. Paranoid, and frankly, a little self-important. That was 2 years ago. I had not stopped doing it. I had sent myself 1,143 of those emails since then. Every one of them time-stamped. Every one of them archived in a Gmail account that Halcyon could not touch. I hung up with Terence and I walked to my desk, where I keep legal pads. I have kept legal pads since 1997. I opened one to a fresh page and I wrote the number 61 at the top of the blank line. I underlined it. Then, without even quite meaning to do it, I underlined it again. My phone was lighting up on the desktop. A text from Darnell. A picture of the kitchen table. Dinner was getting cold. Then another text. 5 minutes later. Smothered pork chops tonight. The kind he makes on Fridays. The real butter kind. Not the shortcut kind. He had made cornbread too. I could smell it from here. Probably. The kitchen window opened onto the hall. We had been planning a simple Friday night. The two of us. The garden beginning to come in. Whatever show we wanted to watch after dinner without anyone needing anything else. My phone lit up again. A question mark from Darnell. Just that. Oh, a question mark. I put the phone face down on my desk. I opened the legal pad again, and I began working through the list of names the way I would work through a proposal, methodically, in the order they came to me. Account 1, Account 2, Account 3, 61 names representing 8 years of 6 a.m. call lists, of Sunday night prep, of the kind of relationship work that does not show up in a PowerPoint until someone stands up and takes credit for it. I wrote them down, and as I wrote, without quite deciding to do it, I began dating each one in the margins. The year I had brought them to Halcyon, 2016, 2014, 2018, 2012, 2015. The dates were a map of my work. They were also proof that Patricia could not claim them as hers, any more than she could claim her own hands and feet. I did not think about Patricia's logic yet. I did not think about what she believed she was owed or entitled to, or what fear had made her take rather than ask. I did not think about the fact that she had presented my work under her name and watched me accept it with a nod and a note in my personal Gmail. What I thought about was the time. I had until Monday morning at 8 a.m. when Meridian Partners opened its doors and Patricia began calling accounts. That was 54 hours. 54 hours to reach every single one of these 61 people and remind them who they had actually been talking to all along. I did not know if I could do it alone. I picked up my phone and I called Kezia Thompson, my CPA, my friend since 1989, The woman who had heard me describe the board presentation when it happened, and who had listened to me minimize it. Oh, that's just how Patricia works. That's just office politics. That's just how it goes. And who had set down her wine glass and said, very quietly, "You stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. You've been ready for 8 years. The question now is whether you're going to stay quiet about it." I had stayed quiet. I had sent myself emails and I had written down the dates. And I had said nothing to anyone except Kezia. And I had told myself that the work spoke for itself. But work only speaks for itself if someone lets it. If someone doesn't stand up and take the voice. Kezia answered on the second ring. I did not start with hello. I said, "Can you come over?" "Now," she said. "Now." She was quiet for 1 second. Then she said, "I'm bringing coffee." I hung up and I looked at the legal pad on my desk. 61 names. The architecture of 8 years. The thing I'd built with my hands and my voice and my Saturday mornings. The thing I was going to take back. I did not know it yet, but I had 54 hours to do it. 54 hours before everything changed. Or before I changed what everything meant. I was 39 years old when I joined Halcyon Advisory Group. And I came in as an account manager with 11 clients that someone else had built and then left behind. That is how I entered Charlotte's financial services world. Not as the founder of something new, but as the custodian of what someone had abandoned. 11 relationships that had been started by a man named Derek, who had moved his family to Denver and decided that was going to be his life now. 11 accounts ranging from a small dental practice in Uptown to a steel fabrication company out in Gastonia that did $2.3 million a year in revenue. I sat down at the desk he had left empty, and I opened the files and I thought, okay, these people trusted Derek. Now they have me. I spent my first year learning their businesses the way you learn a language, by listening more than talking. I would call these 11 people on Tuesday mornings and ask them how the quarter had gone. And I would write down everything they said. Gross margins, staffing challenges, whether their daughter had gotten into the college she wanted, the kind of coffee their office manager preferred in the break room. I was not trying to be slick about it. I was trying to make sure I earned the privilege of knowing them, because Derek had just walked away, and I understood that it was going to take time to repair that. By the end of my second year, those 11 accounts had grown into 34. I was making cold calls at 6 a.m. before anyone else arrived at the office. I was reading industry reports on Sunday nights. But I was staying late on Thursdays to send follow-up emails that felt personal because I'd actually listened to what people said. I was building something from nothing in my own small corner of Charlotte, and the people I was building it with were beginning to know me by my voice on the phone before they even checked the caller ID. The thing about this kind of work is that it does not announce itself. You do not see it in a spreadsheet until the numbers are already complete. A relationship built over 18 months of consistent attention, genuine interest, and follow-through does not have a beginning moment or a middle moment. It just accumulates. You call someone 12 times. You remember their kid's name. You send them an article you read that you thought they would want to see. One day, 3 years in, they tell you that you are the person they trust. And that is when everyone else suddenly notices the work you have already done. By my 5th year at Halcyon, I had built the Charlotte territory to 53 accounts. 42 of them were people I had called cold and converted into relationships. 11 were Derek's inheritance that I had kept. I was earning $147,200 a year, $94,000 base, plus the commissions that came with actual revenue. I was 39 when I started. I was 44 now. This was my work. This was what my days had become. Then Patricia Sorrento arrived. She was 52 years old when she walked into Halcyon as the newly promoted Vice President of Client Strategy, which meant she was immediately my supervisor. She had come from a firm in Atlanta. She had worked her way up through the same channels everyone uses: competence, political awareness, knowing when to speak up in a meeting and when to stay quiet and look competent. She was white. She was sharp. She understood numbers the way some people understand language, not by learning it, but by simply being fluent in it naturally. She spent her first week at Halcyon walking around the office, talking to people, asking about their territories, their pipelines, their targets for the year. When she got to my desk on a Thursday afternoon, I was in the middle of a call with a client. She waited. When I hung up, she pulled up a chair and asked me to walk her through my accounts. Not the big picture version, the actual version. Name by name, revenue stream, renewal dates, risk factors, points of contact. I spent 90 minutes walking her through the architecture of what I had built, and I watched her take notes in a way that made me understand she was not just listening, she was cataloging. She had the kind of attention that makes you feel seen, and at the same time, like you have just handed someone the keys to your house. "This is good work," she said when I finished. "This is really solid work. Simone, you should be proud." That was the beginning. That was the moment I should have noticed something, though I did not know what I should have noticed. She was my supervisor. Supervisors are supposed to understand your work. That was her job. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being good at your job. It makes you vulnerable to people who understand the value of what you do well enough to want it for themselves. I did not know that then. I thought competence was its own protection. I thought if you built something real, it would stay real because the structure itself was sound. I was naive about how institutions work. I was naive about the way a person can stand in front of other people and claim credit for something they did not build and have it land completely because they know how to sound like they built it. My habit started in my first year at Halcyon, before Patricia, before any of this, after every client meeting or call. I would open my personal Gmail account, not my Halcyon email, my own account, the one I paid for and maintained separately, and I would send myself a message. The subject line was always the same format. CN, the client's name, the date. CN, follow, Steele, March 14th, 2014. Inside the body of the email, I would write down everything we had discussed. The tone they used when they asked about a specific service, the thing they mentioned about their family that told me what mattered to them outside of work, the follow-up I had promised, the next call I needed to make. I was not thinking about legal protection. I was thinking about memory. I was thinking about the fact that you cannot manage what you do not remember. 8 years of calls. 1,143 emails. CN subject lines stretching from 2014 all the way through 2022. Every single one of them time-stamped. every single one of them in an archive that lived on my personal account, untouched by Halcyon's IT department, untouched by anyone but me. When I mentioned this habit to Patricia during our 3rd month working together, just in passing, just a comment about how I stayed organized, she said it was paranoid. Frankly, a little self-important. She said in front of the sales team, like I was building some kind of fortress against the world instead of just trying to do my job well. I did not argue. I just kept doing it. Every call, every meeting, CN, subject line, send, archive. The habit became background. I did not think about it. I just knew it was there. By the end of my 4th year with Patricia as my supervisor, I had built the Charlotte territory to 58 accounts. In my 5th year, I was working toward 60. Patricia was in every board meeting, standing in front of Halcyon's senior partners with my pipeline numbers projected on the screen behind her. The Q3 board review in my 5th year was a Thursday morning in late September. I remember it was September because the light outside the conference room windows was that specific shade of late summer. That means fall is coming, whether you are ready for it or not. I sat in the back of the room with a coffee that I had bought in the lobby 20 minutes before, and I watched Patricia stand at the front of the table with a clicker in her hand, and the screen behind her lighting up with the numbers I'd spent that quarter building. She walked through them methodically. The top accounts by revenue, the mid-range accounts with growth potential, the smaller accounts that she was, quote, evaluating for strategic fit. She said my accounts 4 times. I counted, not the accounts in the Charlotte territory, not the portfolio we have built. My accounts, the way you say my house or my car, the way you say something that belongs to you. One of the partners asked a question about the Folau Steel contract, the $2.3 million account, the one I had inherited from Derek and kept alive through consistent attention and genuine interest over 5 years. Patricia answered the question. She used numbers I had given her. She used language about relationship depth that I had used in conversations with her. She made it sound like she understood the account from the inside, like she had been the one maintaining it. I drank my coffee. It was cold by then. I had been sitting there long enough for it to go cold. And I was drinking cold coffee and watching a woman stand in front of people I respected and claim the work of my hands as the work of hers. I did not raise my hand. I did not interrupt. I did not say anything. I just sat there and I let it happen. When the meeting ended, I walked back to my desk and I did what I always did. I opened my personal Gmail. I sent myself an email. Subject line, CN Board Review, September 15th, 2017. In the body, I wrote down what Patricia had said. When she had said it, the exact number of times she had used the phrase, my accounts, and the tone in her voice when she claimed the Folau Steel relationship. I timestamped it. I archived it. I closed the laptop. Then I texted Kezia Thompson and asked if she wanted to have dinner that Sunday. Kezia and I had been friends since 1989. We met in the parking lot of a gym in Atlanta before I moved to Charlotte, and we had stayed friends through every job change, every relationship, every iteration of our lives. She is a CPA. She is Hispanic. She is one of those people who does not waste time on small talk because she believes life is short and you should spend it saying what you actually mean. I had called her after I left Atlanta and moved to Charlotte. I had called her when I got the job at Halcyon. I had called her to tell her about Patricia. She had listened. She had asked questions. She had never told me what to do. We sat at a restaurant in Noda on Sunday night, Kezia across from me in a booth, wine in front of her, listening while I told her about the board presentation in precise detail. I told her what Patricia had said. I told her about the 4 times she used my accounts. I told her about the coffee going cold. I told her about the way the partners nodded like they believed every word. Kezia listened until I finished. Then she set down her wine glass and she said, "You stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. You have been ready for 5 years. The question is whether you're ever going to let anyone know that you were the one doing the work." I did not have an answer for her that night. I told her I did not know. I told her that Patricia was my supervisor and she was good at her job, and maybe this was just how things worked in corporate environments. I told her that I was making good money and I had accounts I cared about, and I did not want to make waves. I told her I would rather be quiet and competent than loud and unemployed. She did not argue. She just finished her wine, and she told me to send myself those emails about every single call. "Document everything," she said. "Your memory's good, but paper is better." I did not know then that she was telling me something I would need to hear again. At my lowest moment, on a Saturday night 3 years later, when I thought I was going to lose everything. By my 8th year at Halcyon, I'd built the Charlotte territory to 61 accounts. 44 of them were clients I had originated myself through cold calls and relationship building, and the kind of consistent attention that does not show up on a balance sheet. 17 of them were Derek's inheritance that I had kept alive and grown. I had spent 8 years on 6 a.m. call lists and Sunday night prep, and the kind of work that does not announce itself until someone stands up in front of a room and takes credit for it without anyone to contradict them. Patricia had been my supervisor for 6 of those 8 years. She had presented my pipeline numbers to the board in 4 consecutive board reviews. She had learned every account, every revenue stream, every renewal date. She had watched me build something real and substantial and transferable. And I had let her watch. I had let her claim it. I had sent myself emails and filed them away in a Gmail account and told myself that at least I knew the truth about what I had done. I did not know it then, but I was building a case. I just did not know what case I was building, or when I would need to make it, or what it would cost me to finally say it out loud. I just sent the emails. I kept the archive. I went to work every day, and I did the thing I was good at doing. And I waited for something to change. I did not know how long I would have to wait. I hung up with Terence, and I sat at my desk for exactly 2 minutes. 2 minutes of not moving, not thinking, or just breathing. Then I grabbed my keys, and I drove to the Bojangles on Independence Boulevard, because I could not stay in my house, and I could not think clearly sitting in a room where the coffee table held the legal pad with 61 names written on it. I needed distance. I needed a place where nobody knew me, and nobody was waiting for me. And I could sit in a car with a phone charger and a clear head and read what Patricia had actually written about the accounts that belonged to me. The parking lot was half full. I pulled into a space near the back where the light from the building reached, but the foot traffic did not. Hi. I opened my laptop and I pulled up the email Terence had forwarded. The subject line still said, "Exciting next chapter." The body of the email was Patricia's pitch to him, and embedded in the pitch was the portfolio. all 61 names, formatted like a sales document, like something she had built and curated and owned. What struck me as I read through it was the accuracy. Patricia had not made anything up. She had not inflated titles or guessed at revenue figures or misremembered which year a relationship had started. Everything she had written was true. A Folau steel fabrication, 2.3 million in annual revenue. A mid-sized dental practice in Uptown, established relationship since 2016. A small consulting firm in the University City corridor. Renewal date coming up in April. Every description was precise because Patricia had watched me build these relationships. She had been in meetings where I explained the nuances of each account. She had read the emails I sent her with updates and renewal dates and strategic notes. She knew these accounts from above, from the supervisor's view, the view from someone who was sitting in every presentation I gave, listening to every call I took, collecting the architecture of my work without being the one who built it. I read through the entire list twice. Slowly. I did not rush. I knew what I was looking at. I was looking at the proof that this was not accidental. Patricia had not grabbed a general contact list on her way out the door. She had specifically selected these 61 accounts. She had written descriptions. She had formatted them as a portfolio. She had attached this list to an email and sent it to Terence Folau at 11:47 p.m. on Thursday, while she was still drawing a salary from Halcyon. The phone in my hand felt heavy. I sat in that Bojangles parking lot, and I understood, for the first time, that I was going to have to move faster than I had ever moved before. Patricia was not going to wait. She was not going to give me time to figure out my next step. She was already making calls. Terence had told me that. His CFO already had a meeting with her penciled in for Monday morning at 8 o'clock. She was calling accounts. She was pitching herself to them. She was telling them that she was the person who had built these relationships. And she was doing it before I had a chance to tell them the truth. I opened my phone. I called Renata Obi. She picked up on the second ring, and her voice was already sharp, already focused. Renata is an employment and trade secrets attorney. She is white, 38 years old, and she works at a firm called Obi and Crane. I had not worked with her before, but Kezia had given me her number 3 years ago when I first started thinking about the board presentations. First started wondering if there was anything I could do about the way Patricia was claiming my work. I had never called. I had just kept the number. Now, I was calling at 8:45 p.m. on a Friday night. "Simone," Renata said. "Terence already called me about the email. What do you have?" I did not start with hello. I started with what I knew. I told her about the timestamp. I told her about the download occurring while Patricia was still technically an employee. I told her about the sales pitch embedded in the email, about the way Patricia had claimed the accounts as her own relationships. I told her about the board presentations, the 4 times Patricia had stood in front of Halcyon's partners and used the phrase, "my accounts," while I sat in the back with a cold coffee. Renata listened. When I finished, she asked the question that mattered. "Simone," she said, "how many of those 61 accounts can you document that you personally originated?" I paused. 3 seconds, not because I did not know the answer, but because I was thinking about the emails. The CN emails, 1,143 of them, spanning 8 years, each one time-stamped, each one archived in my personal Gmail account. I was thinking about whether those emails would be enough, whether they would prove what I needed them to prove. 44, I said. I have the emails going back to the first call. Every single account. The call notes, the follow-up conversations, the relationship development. Everything from the beginning. Renata was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You have the actual emails? The original timestamps." "Dated and archived," I said. "In my personal Gmail. Halcyon cannot touch them." She was quiet again. Then, Okay, Simone, listen to me. I'm going to need those emails. I'm going to need you to send me access to that account tonight. We need to move fast. Patricia is already calling accounts. We need to have a file prepared before Monday morning when Meridian Partners opens. If we can get ahead of this, if we can file before she makes her first official call as a Meridian employee, we have a much stronger case. How fast? I asked. As fast as you can move, she said. I'll be waiting for the email access. Send it to me the moment we hang up. I hung up and I drove home. I drove with the window down, even though the Charlotte air was warm and sticky and not particularly pleasant. I drove because I needed the space to think, and I needed to move, and I needed to get back to my house where my printer was, and my laptop was, and I could print out the list of 61 names and start preparing for the weekend I was about to have. When I pulled into my driveway, it was 10:30 p.m. The house was dark, except for one light in the kitchen. Darnell had turned on the light, and then he had gone to bed because he understood, even without me saying it, that something was wrong, that something had shifted. I did not go inside yet. I sat in my car in the driveway with the engine off, and I opened my laptop, and I sent Renata Obi the access credentials to 8 years of emails. 1143 CN subject lines. 8 years of my own documentation. 8 years of proof that I had done the work and knew what I was talking about. Then I went inside. I went to my home office and I powered on the printer and I pulled up Patricia's forwarded email and I printed out the list of 61 accounts. The paper came out warm. I held it in my hands and I read through the names. Folau Steel, the dental practice in Uptown, the small consulting firm, 58 other accounts that represented 8 years of my life. 8 years of 6 a.m. call lists and Sunday night prep, and the kind of relationship work that had made me valuable to Halcyon. And, apparently, valuable enough to steal. I opened my legal pad. The one I had written the number 61 on earlier. The one with the pen marks where I had underlined it twice. I numbered the list. 1 through 61. I wrote them all out in my own handwriting. Every name, every client I had built or inherited and kept alive or grown and maintained. Every relationship that was now in question. Every account that I was about to spend a weekend calling and fighting for and trying to keep. I picked up my phone and I texted Darnell. Not an explanation. Not a conversation starter. Just 3 words. I'm fine. Don't wait up. I did not wait for him to respond. I put the phone down and I looked at the legal pad in front of me. 61 names. 44 of them were mine. I had the emails to prove it. I had the timestamps. I had the call notes. I had documentation that stretched back 8 years to the moment I had made the first cold call to each one of those accounts and introduce myself and ask them to take a chance on me. What I did not have was time. I had until Monday morning at 8 a.m. That was when Patricia would walk into Meridian Partners and start making calls. That was when she would begin telling these people that she was the one who had built them. That was when the work of claiming what belonged to me would begin in earnest. I stood up and I walked to the kitchen and I made a cup of coffee. Not the community coffee with chicory that I had grown up drinking in Louisiana before I moved to Atlanta. Just regular coffee, hazelnut creamer, black mug, no sugar. I carried it back to my office and I sat down at my desk and I looked at the legal pad with 61 names on it and the printed list from Patricia's email and the empty chair next to me where Kezia would sit tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And I understood that I had 5 hours of sleep before this began. And I understood that I was ready for it. And I understood that I had been ready for it for a long time. I had the emails. I had the documentation. I had the proof of what I had done. What I did not have was the clock working in my favor. What I did not have was a supervisor who would admit what had happened. What I did not have was time to be angry or sad, or even to fully process the fact that a woman I had trusted had taken the architecture of my professional life and decided it belonged to her. What I did have was 54 hours, from Friday 6:17 p.m. when Terrence called me with the forwarded email to Monday 8 a.m. when Meridian Partners opened its doors, and Patricia began making her pitch. 54 hours to reach 61 people and remind them who they had actually been doing business with. 54 hours to remind them that Patricia had not originated these relationships. Patricia had not built them. Patricia had not been the one on the 6 a.m. calls, or the Sunday night prep, or the follow-up conversations that had turned a cold call into a multi-year contract. I had been the one. I had been the one all along. I sat at my desk, and I drank my coffee, and I looked at the list of names, and I did not let myself think about whether I could do it. I did not let myself think about the accounts Patricia had the strongest relationship with, or the ones that might already be gone. I did not let myself think about the 3 accounts by Monday, where I knew Patricia had been the primary contact, and where I was going to lose them no matter what I did. I just looked at the list and I counted the names, and I understood that, out of 61 accounts, I was about to fight for every single one. I started calling at 7:15 a.m. on Saturday morning. I sat in my home office with the door closed, and my phone pressed to my ear, and I dialed the first number on my legal pad. My voice was at its most composed register. Not cold, but controlled, clear. The voice of someone who knows exactly what she is calling to say, and has said it before and will say it again, until she reaches 61. The first call was to a small commercial real estate firm in South Charlotte. The owner picked up on the 4th ring, a little surprised to hear from me on a Saturday morning, and I moved through the conversation the way I had moved through 8 years of conversations like it. I asked how his week had gone. I asked about a property he was listing that he had mentioned last month. I asked whether he had made the decision about the advisory package renewal that was coming up in Q2. And then, when the moment felt right, I said, I wanted you to hear from me first. There's going to be some transitions happening at Halcyon, and I wanted to make sure you knew directly from me that I'm still here. I'm still your contact, and I'm committed to the same level of service you've had from me for the last 5 years. He paused. Then he said, I appreciate that, Simone. Yeah, let's plan on continuing. I marked it on my legal pad. Call 1, confirmed. I hung up and I dialed call 2. Kezia arrived at 8 a.m. with 2 coffees and a legal pad of her own. She did not knock. She just walked in through the kitchen and came into my office and set 1 coffee on my desk and settled herself on the couch with her pen and her paper and her expression that said she had known exactly what Friday night was going to mean, and she was here to make sure I did not do this alone, that she had her own legal pad. She began her own notes. Every name I called, every response I received, every "I'll think about it" or "let me talk to my team" flagged in red pen so that at the end of Saturday, we would know exactly which accounts were holding and which ones needed follow-up. The difference between my call script and what Patricia would have done was the difference between a relationship and a transaction. Patricia's pitch would have been about the future, about the exciting opportunity at Meridian, about the continuity of service and the seamless transition. My call was about the past and the present. It was about the 8 years I'd been the person picking up when they called with a question. It was about the Sunday night prep and the 6 a.m. call lists and the fact that I knew not just their business, but their names, their kids' names, the way they took their coffee, what they had told me mattered in their lives beyond the spreadsheet. Calls 2 through 5 went the same way. Confirmed, 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 confirmed. Call 6 was a small manufacturing firm in Kannapolis where the owner asked me directly, "Is everything okay at Halcyon?" And I told him the truth. "There's a leadership change happening, and I'm calling my accounts to let you know that you have my full commitment to the relationship we've built." He said he appreciated my calling him first. Confirmed. Cars 7 through 18 moved through the morning like a rhythm I could feel in my chest. Some people asked questions. Some people asked if I was leaving Halcyon or staying. I answered every question the same way. I was staying. I was committed to the relationship we had. I wanted to make sure they heard from me before they heard from anyone else. I was their contact. I was the person they could trust. By call 18, we were at noon. Kezia had made coffee notes in one column and outcome notes in another. 17 confirmed. 1, let me think about it. 0 losses. My voice had not wavered. My composure had not cracked. I was moving through the list like it was the work I had been trained to do. Because it was, call 19 was to an HVAC distributor in Concord. A mid-sized operation, solid account. Relationship I had been managing for 6 years. The owner's name was Greg, and when he picked up the phone, there was something in his voice that was different from the other calls. A hesitation. A little bit of awkwardness. "Simone," he said, "I'm glad you called. Actually, I wasn't quite sure what to do about something." My stomach moved, but my voice did not change. "What's that?" "Well," he said, "I got a call from your boss yesterday, Patricia. She called me Thursday night, late, and she was pitching this transition to a new firm, Meridian Partners, and she said she was taking the account with her and wanted to set up a time to talk next week." I marked it on my legal pad. Call 19, not confirmed, not lost, uncertain, but more than that, evidence. Patricia had called Thursday night, before her resignation letter Friday morning, while she was still a Halcyon employee, using company resources, making a pitch for business she did not own. "Greg," I said, and my voice stayed level. "I appreciate you telling me that. What I want you to know is that I'm the person who brought you to Halcyon. I'm the person who has been managing your account. I've built the relationship with your team, and I'm still here, still committed to that relationship. Patricia was my supervisor, but she was not the one doing the day-to-day work with you. I was, and I want to continue that." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you've been great to work with. I'm going to stick with you." I marked the note on the legal pad. Confirmed. Then I texted Renata the timestamp. Saturday, 8:17 a.m. Greg in Concord confirming that Patricia called him Thursday night, approximately 11:50 p.m., using company hardware to solicit business before her official resignation. "Kezia watched me. She did not say anything. She just marked the red flag on her legal pad and kept writing. I dialed call 20. The calls continued through the afternoon. 20 through 32 arrived in their own rhythm. Some people said yes immediately. Some people asked questions. Some people said they wanted to think about it, and I did not push them. I just made sure they knew that they had my commitment, that I was the one who had built the relationship, that I was staying, and they could depend on that. By the time we reached call 32, it was 4:47 p.m., and we had confirmed 32 accounts. 32 out of 61, just over half of the portfolio locked in before Patricia even officially started at Meridian on Monday morning. Kezia stood up from the couch and she went into the kitchen and she made sandwiches. Not a speech about how I was doing the right thing or how I was going to win or how this was justice unfolding. Just sandwiches. Turkey and cheese on wheat bread. The kind I liked. The kind she remembered from 8 years of knowing me. She brought the plate into my office and set it on my desk next to my legal pad and my phone and the list of 61 names. And she did not say anything about what was happening or what it meant or how brave I was being. She just set the food down and went back to the couch with her own sandwich and her own legal pad and kept logging the calls. I sat back in my chair and I looked at the plate and I thought about the fact that Kezia had driven across Charlotte on a Saturday morning to sit in my home office and be a witness to this work. Not to help me feel better about it. Not to tell me it was going to be okay, just to be present, to mark it down, to make sure that when I reached the end of this weekend, there would be documentation not just in my emails and in the legal pads, but in the memory of someone else that I had called these people, that I had done this work, that I had fought for what was mine. The sandwiches were good. The coffee Kezia had brought was still warm. I ate standing up because I could not sit still, and I looked at my legal pad with 32 confirmed accounts, marked in the clean lines of my own handwriting. And I thought about call 19 and the moment Greg told me Patricia had already called him, and I thought about the fact that Patricia had moved faster than I expected, but not faster than I could follow. I had 29 more calls to make, 29 more accounts to reach before Monday morning at 8 a.m. I had the weekend. I had Kezia. I had the CN emails archived in my Gmail account, and the legal documentation that Renata was putting together, and the evidence in my own voice, in my own composure, in the way these people on the phone knew exactly who had been building these relationships all along. I picked up the phone and I dialed call 33. The afternoon moved into early evening. Call 33 confirmed. Call 34 asked for time to think about it. Many calls 35 through 38 came back confirmed. By 8:30 p.m., I had 41 confirmed accounts. 41 out of 61. 2/3 of the portfolio locked in by Saturday evening. Kezia had made more coffee. She had ordered dinner, something from the Thai place on Morrison Avenue, the one with the yellow curry she knew I liked, but never ordered for myself because I was always too focused on other things. The food arrived, and Kezia set it on the side table, and we ate in my office like this was our job now. Like documenting this weekend was the most important work either of us had to do. At 10:15 p.m., I stopped calling. Not because I was tired, but because it was late and I needed to sleep and I needed to wake up tomorrow and call the remaining 20 accounts. And I needed to do this with a mind that was still clear. I looked at my legal pad. 41 confirmed. 6 uncertain. 14 remaining. Kezia gathered her legal pad and her empty coffee cup, and she looked at me standing in my home office with the light on and the phone in my hand. And she said, "You should sleep." "I know," I said. "You did good work today," she said. I did not say anything because I did not think of it as good work or bad work. I thought of it as necessary work. I thought of it as the thing that had to happen because Patricia had taken what was mine, and I had spent 8 years documenting that it was mine, and now I was spending a weekend reminding people of that fact before she could convince them otherwise. Kezia left at 10:30 p.m. She drove back across Charlotte to her own house. I went upstairs and I told Darnell what the count was. 41 confirmed, and he held me for a moment without asking questions. And I went to sleep, knowing that I had 16 hours left and 20 more calls to make, and the architecture of my professional life was being decided by how fast I could talk and how well people remembered that I was the one who had built these relationships in the first place. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Sunday morning was coming, and I was not finished yet. Call 47 came through at 2:40 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. I had been calling for 7.5 hours straight. My voice had found its rhythm. 40 names confirmed. The legal pad on my desk was filling up with checks and confirmations, and the occasional red flag that needed follow-up. I was moving through the list like I was building something, instead of fighting to keep what I had already built. Then I dialed Terence Folo. He picked up immediately, like he had been waiting for my call. That should have told me something right there. In 8 years of calling Terence, he had never picked up on the first ring. He was a busy man. He was the owner of a steel fabrication company doing $2.3 million in annual revenue. He did not just answer phones. But today he did. Today he picked up like he knew I was going to call, and he had something he needed to tell me. "Simone," he said, and his voice had that quality in it that told me the news was not good. "I'm glad you called. I need to talk to you about something." "Go ahead," I said. My voice stayed level. I was sitting in my home office with the door closed, and Kezia somewhere in the background making more coffee, and I was already understanding that this call was different from the ones before it. "My CFO had a call with Patricia this morning," Terence said. "About 30 minutes, and he seems pretty set on making the move to Meridian." He's impressed with what she's pitching, and he's asking me if we should switch over the account to her. I did not raise my voice. I did not say anything for 1 second. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Did Patricia tell your CFO what she's promising on the advisory side? Terence described what Patricia had pitched, a regulatory compliance framework, a specific system for managing certain types of audits and documentation that would save his CFO time and reduce risk exposure. It was a real thing. It was a valuable thing. And it was a thing that Patricia could not possibly deliver, because Patricia had not touched that framework in 4 years. I listened for 90 seconds while Terence explained what Patricia had promised his CFO. And in those 90 seconds, I understood what had happened. Patricia had called his CFO first, before she even officially started at Meridian, because she knew what Follow-Steal meant. She knew that landing the largest account on the list would be her credential. She knew that if she could move $2.3 million of annual revenue to Meridian on her first day, Meridian's managing partner would believe every other claim she made about her portable book of business. But in her rush to land the account, Patricia had made a promise that she could not keep. She had promised a regulatory compliance framework that she did not know how to operate anymore, that she had not used in 4 years, and that existed inside Halcyon systems in a form that Patricia could not access. "Terence," I said, "I need to come out to Follow-Steal tomorrow morning. I need to sit down with you and your CFO and show you something." "Okay," he said. "What time?" 8 o'clock, I said. "I'll drive out there." 40 minutes each way to Gastonia. 80 minutes round trip that I did not have. 20 more accounts left to call on Sunday. 9 hours until Monday morning at 8 a.m. But this account was not going to be held over the phone. This account needed to see what Patricia had promised and what I actually knew how to deliver. I hung up and I looked at my legal pad. I marked the name Terence Folau with a question mark instead of a red flag. Not lost. Not yet. Just uncertain. Just the moment where everything shifted from steady to urgent. Then I picked up my phone and I called account 35. The afternoon moved into early evening. Calls 35 through 41 went the way the morning calls had gone. Confirmed, confirmed, confirmed. Some with questions, some with immediate commitment. By 6:30 p.m., I had moved the count from 41 to 50. 50 accounts confirmed staying with me. 50 out of 61. But the number that mattered was still one. Follow-Steal. 2.3 million. The account that could determine everything about how Monday morning was going to land. I kept calling. Calls 51 through 60 came through the evening. Some people were busy. Some people I had to leave messages for. Some people said they would confirm on Monday. I took every answer and I kept moving because the only thing between me and complete loss was the next person who picked up the phone and told me they were staying. By 9 p.m., I was sitting in my car in my driveway. 41 accounts confirmed on Saturday. So 9 more called and confirmed between 7 and 9 p.m. That meant 50 confirmed and solid. 11 uncertain. None completely lost yet. 20 more to call on Sunday. And then the site visit to Gastonia at 8 o'clock Monday morning, 2 hours before Meridian Partners officially opened for the day, and Patricia started making her final push. I had forgotten to eat dinner. Kezia had left around 7 p.m. with instructions to take care of myself, which meant instructions that I was going to ignore because there was no time for care. I had a granola bar in my car. I sat in the driveway with the engine off and I ate the granola bar. And I looked at my legal pad in the darkness and I thought about Terence's voice when he told me his CFO was set on making the move. I turned on the radio. I listened for exactly 4 minutes to a song I did not pay attention to, and a news report I did not hear, and a commercial for something I did not need. 4 minutes of not thinking about Patricia, or the accounts, or the compliance framework, or the fact that I had to drive 40 minutes each way on Sunday morning to save the largest account on my list. 4 minutes of just sitting in my car, eating a granola bar, and listening to the sound of other people's voices coming through a speaker. Then I turned off the radio, and I got out of the car, and I went back inside to my home office where the legal pad was waiting, and the list of 20 remaining accounts was waiting, and the Sunday morning that was going to determine whether any of this had mattered at all. I did not sleep. I showered and I changed clothes, and I sat at my desk, and I looked at the names of the accounts I still needed to call. 20 names. The ones I had not reached on Saturday or early Sunday morning. The ones who were going to be the difference between holding most of my book or losing critical pieces of it. Darnell came downstairs at midnight, and he sat down next to me without being invited. He did not ask me how the day had gone. He just handed me a cup of coffee in the blue mug his army battalion had given him when he retired. 2 sugars and a splash of cream, the way I liked it. And he said, "You should try to sleep." "I know," I said. "You're going to need to be sharp tomorrow," he said. "I know," I said. He stayed for a few minutes, and then he went back upstairs because he understood that sleep was not going to come and that the sharpness I needed was not the kind that sleep could give me. The sharpness I needed was the kind I had been building all week, the kind that comes from knowing exactly what you have lost and exactly what you are fighting to keep. I sat in my home office with the mug of coffee Darnell had made, and I looked at the legal pad, and I thought about Terence's CFO and the compliance framework Patricia had promised, and the thing I was going to have to do on Sunday morning to keep that account from walking. The night moved slowly. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I did not try to sleep. I reviewed the 20 remaining names. I thought about what each person might say. I thought about Folo Steel and the morning that was coming. I thought about the moment in 90 seconds when I had understood what Patricia had done and what she could not possibly deliver. And I thought about the fact that Patricia's overreach, her confidence that she could promise something she did not know how to deliver, was going to be the thing that saved this account. By 5 a.m., I was showered again and dressed and ready. Sunday morning was coming. 20 accounts left to call before I drove to Gastonia. And then the moment where I was going to have to sit across from Terence Follow and his CFO and prove that Patricia had made a promise she could not keep. I picked up my phone and I called the first of the 20 remaining names. By Sunday evening, I had completed 52 calls. 50 confirmed. 2 uncertain, 9 remaining. The Gastonia visit had gone exactly the way I needed it to go. I sat across from Terence Folau and his CFO at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning in a steel fabrication plant that smelled like metal and machine oil. And I walked them through the regulatory compliance framework that Patricia had promised and could not deliver. I showed them the system inside Halcyon's servers. I showed them the documentation I had built. I showed them the training materials that Patricia had not touched in 4 years. By the time I left Gastonia at 9:30 a.m., Terence was nodding and his CFO was quiet in a way that suggested he understood what Patricia had oversold. But he was not locked. Not yet. Terence said he would call me on Monday morning before Meridian opened at 8 o'clock. That was as close to a guarantee as I was going to get. And it was not close enough. The 9 remaining accounts were the ones that had not answered when I called on Sunday morning. 3 of them were accounts where Patricia held the primary relationship, where she had been the face of Halcyon to these clients, where they knew her name first and mine second. One of them was a client Patricia had actually introduced to Halcyon personally 6 years ago. I knew these 3 were probably lost. I knew that no amount of calling was going to convince them to stick with me when they had a personal relationship with Patricia. And Patricia was offering them continuity under a new banner. But I still had to call them. I still had to make the attempt. I still had to reach all 61 accounts before Monday morning at 8 a.m. because if I did not reach them, I would never know if they could have been saved. At 11:30 p.m. on Sunday night, I was sitting at my kitchen table. Darnell's dinner plate was in front of me. Smothered pork chops with real butter. The good kind, not the shortcut kind. Collard greens, cornbread, food that had been made with the intention of keeping me alive through this weekend. I had eaten some of it. There was still food on the plate that I had not finished. And I was looking at that food and thinking about the 9 remaining names and the 3 that were probably already gone. Darnell came downstairs without being called. He did not ask me how the Gastonia visit had gone or whether Terence was locked. He did not tell me to rest or tell me it would be fine or tell me anything at all. He just came downstairs and he sat down across from me at the kitchen table. And he was there. He was present in the way that only someone who loves you can be present. Not trying to fix anything. Not trying to make me feel better. Just sitting across from me while I sat with the knowledge that 3 accounts were probably lost. And I had 9 more calls to make. And it was almost midnight on Sunday. And Monday morning was coming, and nothing was guaranteed. We sat in silence for 9 minutes. Then my phone rang. It was 11:42 p.m. Kezia. "Hey," she said, and her voice was warm in the way it always was, like she had not just called me at almost midnight on a Sunday night, but like we were sitting on her porch on a summer evening drinking lemonade and had nowhere else to be. We did not talk about the calls. We did not talk about the accounts or the confirmations or the 3 that were probably lost. Instead, Kezia said, "Do you remember that Sunday school trip we took in 1997? I did remember. It was a church bus trip to a state park. It was the kind of trip where the whole church loaded into a bus and drove for 3 hours and spent the day at a place that smelled like pine trees and dirt and the particular metallic smell of a church bus that had been running the air conditioning too cold. I remembered standing at a picnic table at that park and understanding that I was part of something bigger than myself. I remembered the smell of the bus on the way home. Dust and air conditioning fluid and the worn vinyl of seats that had carried church people on journeys for decades. "I remember," I said. "That smell," Kezia said. That church bus smell. You remember that? Yes, I said. You were so ready, even then, Kezia said. You were ready for everything, and you stayed ready. And now you're still ready. You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You've been ready. It was a line she had said to me 2 years ago, sitting across from me at a restaurant in Noda after I told her about the board presentation. It was the line that had meant nothing to me then because I did not understand what readiness meant. It was the line that meant everything to me now because I understood. In that moment, at 11:42 p.m. on Sunday night, sitting at my kitchen table with Darnell across from me, and 9 remaining calls ahead of me, that Kezia was telling me something that I needed to remember. I was ready. I had always been ready. The question was not whether I could do this. The question was whether I was going to keep doing it until there was nothing left to do. Okay, I said. You got this, Kezia said. I hung up and I moved the plate to the side. The smothered pork chops were cold by then. I did not care. I picked up my phone and I looked at the 9 remaining names on my legal pad. 3 that were probably lost. 6 that were uncertain. All 9 that needed to hear from me before 8 o'clock on Monday morning. I dialed the first number. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then someone picked up. A voice I knew, an account I had built, a relationship I had spent 8 years maintaining. It was past midnight on Sunday. The person who answered was probably confused about why I was calling. But they answered, and I said, I know it's late, and I'm sorry to call you at this hour, but I needed to reach you before Monday morning. I wanted to make sure you heard from me first. The remaining 9 calls came through Sunday night like the final stretch of something I had already committed to finishing. After Kezia hung up at 11:42 p.m., I picked up the phone and I moved through the names with accumulating clarity. Some of them confirmed immediately. People who had been waiting for me to call, who knew something was shifting and wanted to hear it from me first. Some of them took a moment. Some of them asked questions I had already answered 50 times that weekend. Some of them were uncertain, hesitating, and I did not try to convince them beyond the facts. I just told them who I was and what I had built and what I was asking them to choose. Then I moved to the next name. Call 53 was an accounting firm in South Charlotte. Confirmed. Call 54 was a small insurance brokerage. Confirmed. Call 55 was a manufacturing operation in Gastonia, different from Folau Steel. Smaller, less at stake. And the owner asked me if I thought Patricia would retaliate if he stuck with me. I told him no. I told him Patricia would be too busy trying to save her own position at Meridian to worry about accounts that had already chosen to stay. He confirmed. By 11:15 p.m., I had 9 names left, 8 remaining calls before call 61. Call 56 was a commercial real estate firm. The owner picked up the phone and he said, Simone, I was hoping you'd call tonight. Confirmed. Call 57 was a small consulting operation. Confirmed. Call 58 was a mid-sized manufacturing firm where I had watched the relationship grow from absolutely nothing. 6 years ago, the founder had not wanted to meet with me. He had not believed Halcyon could offer him anything his current advisor could not. I had called him 8 times before he agreed to have a conversation. By the 5th year, He was sending me Christmas cards. By the 6th year, he was recommending me to other business owners. When I called him on Sunday night, his first words were, "I knew you'd call. I was waiting for you to call." Confirmed. Call 59 was a woman-owned small business in the University City corridor, a boutique civil engineering firm that specialized in sustainable infrastructure. She had been my client for 4 years, and I had helped her navigate a complex advisory situation that had kept her company from going under during a cash flow crisis in year 2. She listened while I explained what was happening. And then she said, "You stayed with me when I thought I was going to lose everything. I'm staying with you." Confirmed. That left one. Call 61. The last name on my legal pad, the one that would determine whether I had actually reached every single account I had built, or whether there was one person left who had chosen Patricia instead. I looked at the clock. It's 11:29 p.m. 2 minutes left before the stroke of midnight between Sunday and Monday. I picked up the phone and I dialed the founder of that civil engineering firm in the University City corridor. The man who had been my client for 6 years. The man who had built his company from nothing and who had trusted me to help him keep it alive. He picked up on the first ring. "Simone," he said, and before I could even begin the call, before I could say anything except his name, he said, "Simone, I knew you'd call. I've been waiting. Whatever's happening over there, I follow you, not a title." I did not say anything for a moment. I was standing in my kitchen doorway. Darnell had gone to bed hours ago. The house was quiet except for the sound of his voice coming through the phone. And in that moment, 6 years of building something real, of being someone a person could trust, of showing up when it would have been easier to disappear. All of it landed in my chest in a way that I had not allowed it to land the entire weekend. I cracked open, just for a moment, just enough that I felt the tears start, but I did not let them stay. I pulled it back together. I thanked him in a voice that stayed level, that stayed composed, that held all the professionalism and gratitude I had spent 8 years learning how to convey. I told him I would see him on the other side of Monday. I hung up and I stood in the kitchen doorway and I let myself feel the weight of what I had just finished. 59 seconds later, at 11:31 p.m., I had reached all 61. I moved to my home office. My legal pad was on the desk, and I went through every single name, and I marked every single one. 61 checks. 61 accounts that had confirmed they were staying with me. 61 relationships that I had fought for and won. I sat down and I typed a text message to Renata Obi. The timestamp showed 11:58 p.m. when I sent it. 61 of 61, Monday is hers. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was thinking that Patricia had won by showing up first, by making the initial move, by being bold enough to take what did not belong to her. I was thinking that Monday morning at 8 a.m., Patricia would walk into Meridian Partners, and she would start making her calls, and she would begin the process of claiming that she had a portable book of business. When in fact, she had nothing, no confirmations, no accounts, no relationships that could sustain her in a new firm where nobody knew her and nobody owed her anything. Renata's response came through 45 seconds later, at 12:43 a.m. on Monday morning. "No, Monday is yours. See you at 7. I closed the legal pad. I looked at the 61 names, each one marked with a check, each one representing a conversation and a choice, and a moment when someone had decided that they trusted me more than they trusted the title or the institution or the person who had claimed to have built the relationship, when in fact she had only been watching from above. I sat in the quiet for a moment, not celebrating, not declaring victory, just sitting in the space between the weekend that had just ended and the Monday morning that was coming. Just sitting with the understanding that I had done what I came to do, that I had reached all 61, that I had reminded every single person on that list who had actually been building the relationships all along. Then I closed the legal pad and I stood up and I went upstairs to bed, knowing that at 7 a.m., Renata Obe would be waiting, and at 8 a.m., Meridian Partners would open, and at some point during the morning, Patricia would begin to understand that the book of business she had so confidently extracted and claimed as her own was not actually hers to claim. But that was Monday's work. Sunday was finished, and I had won it. Patricia Sorrento pulled into the Meridian Partners parking garage at 7:55 a.m. on Monday morning. I know the exact time because Renata told me later, pulling it from the security log. She pulled in wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather portfolio and a list of 61 names that she believed were going to change her career. She had a Halcyon parking permit still stuck to her dashboard. She had not even bothered to remove it. Her introduction meeting at Meridian was scheduled for 9 a.m. That gave her an hour to prepare. That gave her an hour to sit in her new office, if she had a new office yet, if Meridian had actually set one up for her, and review her talking points, and prepare to walk into a room with Meridian's senior partners, and present herself as the person who had built a portable book of 61 accounts. But between 8 o'clock and 8:55 a.m., Patricia did not sit in an office. Between 8 o'clock and 8:55 a.m., Patricia called. She worked through the list methodically. 61 names. The same script she'd used in the pitch email to Terence. The same language about continuing partnerships and exciting new opportunities at Meridian Partners. The same confident tone of someone who had already decided that these accounts belonged to her because she had supervised them, because she had attended meetings, because she had read the emails I sent her about renewal dates and strategic considerations. The accounts that picked up were polite. They were brief. Several of them mentioned, a little awkwardly, that they had already spoken to me over the weekend. 2 of them said they had already signed retention paperwork with Halcyon. 2 of them said they would need to think about it, but that they had commitments they wanted to honor. One of them said, quietly, that they appreciated Patricia's professionalism, but that they had decided to stick with the person who had actually originated their account. By 9:45 a.m., Patricia had worked through her list for 45 minutes. By 10:30 a.m., she had reached 22 names. She had converted 0. I did not see any of this. I was at Halcyon in my home office, waiting. Renata was at her office, waiting. Marcus Webb was somewhere in the Halcyon building, probably wondering what was happening. The question that was being answered in real time. In a parking garage office at Meridian Partners, was whether Patricia had actually built something portable, or whether she had only been watching while someone else did the work. The answer arrived at 11:15 a.m., when Meridian's managing partner called Patricia into his office. I do not know what was said in that room. That is not the story Renata told me later, and it is not the story I am telling now. What I know is what happened at 11:20 a.m., 5 minutes after Patricia walked into that office. At 11:20 a.m. on Monday morning, I was sitting at my desk at Halcyon. I was not celebrating. I was not waiting for news. I was working. I had already moved through the list of 61 names, confirmed 58 of them, and I was beginning to process what the next steps would look like. I was thinking about the accounts I'd probably lost. The 3 where Patricia had held the primary relationship, where she had been the one meeting with the client, where she had been the face of Halcyon. I was thinking about the pipeline I needed to build to replace them. I was thinking about the accounts that had stayed and what my renewal schedule looked like for the rest of the year. My email notification chimed. An email from Renata Obe. The subject line read, "Filed. You're good." 3 attachments. The civil complaint. The evidence documentation. The trade secrets filing that Renata had prepared over the weekend based on the timestamp of Patricia's email download. The forwarded account list. The data extraction from company servers, while Patricia was still an active employee. And 8 years of my CN. Emails archived in a Gmail account that Halcyon could never touch. I opened the attachments, and I read through them, and I understood what had just happened. Renata had filed before Patricia even officially started at Meridian. Renata had gotten ahead of it. Renata had made sure that the legal record was clean and documented and ready before Patricia could claim that any of this was a misunderstanding or a mistake or something that had happened in good faith. I closed the email and I turned back to my screen and I opened the account file for account 44. The civil engineering firm in the University City corridor. The account that had been my client for 6 years. The account whose founder had said at 11:31 p.m. on Sunday night that he followed me, not a title. I had a Q2 renewal proposal to write. The account was coming up for renewal in 6 weeks. I needed to make sure the advisory package was right. I needed to make sure the framework we had built together was still serving their needs. I needed to make sure that when they sat down to discuss next year's services, they understood exactly what they were getting and why they were getting it from me. I'd started typing the opening paragraph when Marcus Webb appeared in my office doorway. Marcus is a junior sales associate at Halcyon. He is 34 years old. He had been trying to figure out which path to take at Halcyon, whether to stay, whether to move, whether to follow Patricia to Meridian, or stay with the company that had given him a job. He had been waiting to see which way the wind was going to blow. He started to say something, then he stopped. Then he looked at me sitting at my desk with the renewal proposal open on my screen and the email from Renata closed but not forgotten. And he looked at my face and he understood what had happened. He did not say anything. He just nodded once and he turned around and he walked back out of my office doorway. I turned back to my screen. I pulled up the compliance framework that I had built for account 44. I reviewed the advisory package we had structured for them. I began typing the proposal for Q2 renewal, and I did not think about Patricia or Meridian or the managing partner's office or what was being said in conversations I would never be part of. I thought about the work, the real work, the thing I had been doing all along while someone else was taking credit for it. I thought about the fact that it was Monday morning and the sun was coming through my office window and I had a business to run and accounts that were staying with me, and a future that I was going to build one call at a time, one relationship at a time, one renewal at a time. I thought about the email from Renata that said, "You're good," not because the legal machinery was in motion, not because Patricia was going to pay a price, not because someone else was finally going to face consequences for what they had taken, but because I had done the work. Because I had spent a weekend calling 61 people and reminding them who I was. Because I had reached all of them. Because 58 of them had chosen to stay. Because I had built something real, and I had documented it, and I had protected it, and I had reclaimed it. That was all the vindication I needed. I drafted the Q2 renewal proposal for account 44, and I did not look back. But 3 weeks later, Halcyon's legal team filed a civil complaint against Patricia Sorrento. They used the IT download log that showed the timestamp of 11:47 p.m. Thursday. They used the forwarded email that Patricia had sent to Terence Folau, identifying all 61 accounts as relationships she had personally managed and grown. They used 8 years of my CN, emails from my personal Gmail account, each one timestamped, each one proving that I had originated 44 of the 61 accounts and maintained all of them through relationship work that Patricia had only observed from above. The final account tally was 58 of 61. 58 accounts that had chosen to stay with me. The 3 who went to Meridian were exactly the 3 I had expected to lose, the accounts where Patricia held the primary relationship. Where she had been the face of Halcyon. Where the personal connection ran deeper than anything I could overcome in a weekend of phone calls. I had made peace with that loss before I even finished dialing. What I had not made peace with was being invisible. And now I was not invisible anymore. I had already begun building their replacements. 6 months before Patricia ever downloaded that list, I had started quietly cultivating a pipeline of potential new clients. I had been calling people in my network who knew my work and respected what I built. I had been planting seeds. By the time Patricia stole my accounts, I was already 6 months ahead on replacements. The 3 accounts I lost would be replaced by early fall. The work would continue. The growth would not stop. It took 3 weeks for Halcyon's managing partner to call me into his office. 3 weeks for him to understand what had happened, to review the legal file that Renata had prepared, to make the calculation that losing his vice president of client strategy to a lawsuit was not going to be good for the firm's reputation. 3 weeks for him to decide what he was going to do about the woman who had spent 8 years building the largest territory in Charlotte and had documented every single relationship in a way that would hold up in court. He called me into a conference room. Not his office. A conference room, which meant this was official, which meant this was a decision that had been made at the partner level. I sat down across from him and I waited for him to speak first because that is what you do when someone has called you into a room to tell you something important. "Simone," he said, "we want to make this right. We want to offer you the Vice President of Client Strategy title. The salary would be $112,000 base, plus your commission structure on the accounts you maintain. $112,000. The title I had been denied for 2 years. The other title that Patricia had received without building a single account from scratch. The title that was supposed to be worth everything. I was 47 years old. I had spent 8 years building something real. I had spent a weekend protecting it. I had spent 3 weeks watching Halcyon's legal team prove that I had built it. $112,000 was not what I deserved. I smiled. I reached down and I picked up the notepad that I had brought with me into the conference room. The notepad where I had written down the number I was willing to accept. $129,000. 17,000 more than what they were offering. The difference between what they thought I was worth and what I knew I was worth. I slid the notepad across the table. I did not say anything. I just waited. I had learned over the course of 8 years that silence is a powerful tool. Silence does not give away your position. Silence does not negotiate against itself. Silence just sits there and lets the other person feel the weight of what you have refused to accept. He looked at the number and he looked back at me. He said, "Let me talk to the other partners." He came back 40 minutes later and he said, $127,000. That is the best we can do. I nodded. 127,000 was 2,000 less than what I had asked for. But it was 15,000 more than what they had offered. It was a negotiation that acknowledged my value. It was a salary that reflected the work I had done. "Okay," I said. "That was 3 weeks ago. Now it is Sunday morning, and I am sitting in a pew at Mount Calvary Baptist with Kezia beside me and Darnell's hand over mine. The folded legal pad with all 61 names checked off is tucked inside my purse. Not because I need it anymore. Not because I need to prove anything to anyone. Just because it is the record of what I did. The documentation of 8 years of work compressed into one weekend of calling and fighting and refusing to let someone else claim credit for my hands and my voice and my time. The organist strikes the first chord of the opening hymn. The music fills the sanctuary. The choir begins to sing. Kezia squeezes my other hand. Darnell does not move his hand from mine. Around me, the church is full of people who know me, people who have watched me build my career, people who have asked me to bring cornbread to potlucks and to speak at prayer meetings and to sit with them when they were facing their own betrayals. And I do not reach for my phone. I do not check my messages. I do not think about counts or commissions or the legal complaint that is being filed against Patricia Sorrento. I just sit here in this pew with the people who love me and the people I love. And I listen to the hymn. And I let myself be present in this moment that has nothing to do with work and everything to do with the life I have built outside of Halcyon. Darnell's hand is warm. Kezia is singing beside me. The organist is playing the opening hymn. And I am thinking about the fact that what I built at Halcyon is important. But it is not the most important thing I have built. The most important thing I've built is right here. The relationships, the community, the people who showed up on a Friday night and a Saturday morning and a Sunday evening and asked nothing of me except that I stay ready and that I remember who I am. That is what I was protecting all along. Not the money, not the title, not the accounts. The peace of knowing that I built something that belongs to me. The integrity of claiming what is mine. The knowledge that when I sleep at night, I sleep knowing that I did the work and I documented it, and I refuse to let anyone else tell the story of my hands. The hymn continues, and I close my eyes, and I am finally, completely at rest.